A 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 chord, A7 to the 4 chord, D7, back to A7, the 1 chord. We get to the second 4 bars, the 4 chord, D7, stay on the 4, back to the 1, stay on the 1. Now we go to the 5, E7, 4, D7, to the 1, A7, turn around on the 5, E7. Back to the top, A7, to the D7, back to the A7. Moving on to the second 4 bars, 4 chord, back to the 1. Moving on to the last 4 bars, E7, the 5 to the 4, D7, to the 1, A7. Turn around on the 5. Big finish on the 1. Hey everybody, Gary here with Guitar Tricks, and in this video I want to help you master a basic 12-bar blues progression and be aware of a couple variations, because the first step to playing the blues is knowing the progression like the back of your hand. You just want to always be aware of what chord you're on, and you want to be aware of a few different variations of a basic 12-bar blues that you'll hear and you'll encounter. So of course there's lots of blues-based songs, blues-inspired songs, bluesy songs, but we're just talking straight up 12-bar blues in this video. We're going to do everything in the key of A, but I'm going to briefly demonstrate at the end how you could take that same 1-4-5 structure and figure out how to do it in other keys as well. And we're also going to talk about these bluesy chords that I'm playing, these 7th chords, which are the standard chords used in the blues. The good news is that you could take chords you might already know, like just an A, and make it an A7 very easily. A lot of times the 7th chords are even easier than the regular chords. Before we get into it, please go ahead and click subscribe so that you get all of the latest and greatest content from Guitar Tricks. And if you want to be notified of any new lesson, be sure to tap the bell and let us know in the comments what you'd like to see in future lessons. That's where we're always looking for ideas. All right, let's get into it. All right, so the first chord we're going to play is A7. So what does this 7 mean, right? Well, here's the thing. Every basic chord has a root, a third, and a fifth. That's a basic major or minor chord. So this A major chord right here, the root is A. Then we have the note E, 2nd fret of the D string. That's the 5th. Then we have another A, 2nd fret of the G string. That's the root again. Then we have the note C sharp, 2nd fret of the B string. That's the 3rd. So we have a root, 3rd, or 5th. And then we have an E, again, the open E. And that's the 5th again. So even though I'm playing 5 strings, there's only 3 notes, A, C sharp, and E. That's the root, the 3rd, and the 5th. Now, a basic 7th chord is when we add to that a minor 7th, the interval of a minor 7th. So the interval of a minor 7th from our root A is the note G. So all we're going to do is add an open G string. We're going to get rid of this double root note A on the 2nd fret of the G string and just replace it with an open G string. And then we have now root 5th, minor 7th, major 3rd, and then 5th again. And that is our A7 chord. It's got a very bluesy sound. The cool thing about it is it's got a major 3rd and a minor 7th, so it's kind of major, kind of minor. And between those two notes, this is the minor 7th and the major 3rd, we have this cool dissonant interval called a tritone. And that's kind of that sound that gives this chord its, its personality. Okay. So now when I show you the other 7th chords, it's the same concept. So the theory will hold true for every 7th chord. You have a root, a major 3rd, a 5th, and a minor 7th. That's how you make a basic 7th chord. And we call that a dominant 7th chord, but it's the default 7th chord. So anytime you just hear someone say A7 or C7, it means A dominant 7, C dominant 7. But being it's the default, we don't have to use that word dominant. Whereas if it's a major 7th chord, you have to say major 7th. That's something different we're not going to talk about. Or a minor 7th. Again, we're not talking about that right now. Just your basic 7th chords, which are found in a standard blues progression. All right, so A7 is our 1 chord. And And there I'm using second finger on the second fret of the D string or string 4 counting toes to nose, and then third finger or ring finger on the second fret of string 2 counting toes to nose. And then I have open A string or string 5, open third string, and then open first string as well. Now our 4 chord is D7. So if we think about a regular D, this third fret of the B string makes the second D in that chord. We already have the open D string. So we're going to replace that note with the first fret on the B string. There's our minor 7th. And now it's kind of a mirror image. So I got second finger on the second fret of the G string, first finger on the first fret of the B string, and third finger on the second fret of the high E string. And then I've got the open D. There's our D7, that's our 4 chord. With the D7 and the A7, I use my thumb to mute out the low E string, right? So on the A7, I'm just muting out, I'm just barely touching that low E string to mute it out. And then on the D7, same thing. And then our 5 chord is going to be E7. So if we take a basic E, again, this second fret of the D string is an E that we don't need. This chord, we have 3 E's, E, E, E. So we're going to replace that E with the note D, which is our minor 7th. And now we have E7. The chord becomes even easier. Second fret with second finger on the A string or string 5 counting toes to nose. And then first fret on string 3 counting toes to nose with the index finger. And then strum all 6 strings. All right, so we have A7, D7, E7. That's 1, 4, and 5. Okay, now we want to apply that to a chord structure. Now, there's a few variations, but let's start with the one that is more standard. Easier to hear when the chord progression starts over, but perhaps a little more difficult, but we'll talk about the variations after. So the first 4 bars go A7, D7, A7, A7. So that means each bar is 4 beats. So A7, 3, 4, D7, 2, 3, 4, A7, 2, 3, 4, A7, 2, 3, 4, like that. I like to see the 12-bar blues as 3 groupings of 4. Like a phone number, you think of it as the first 3 numbers, second 3 numbers, less, right? We want to break it into sections. So the first 4 bars go 1 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord, 1 chord. And in this case, that's A, D, A, 7th chords, right? Then the next 4 bars go 4, 4, 1, 1. D7, D7, A7, A7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the last 4 bars, we've got the 5 chord, E7 to the 4 chord, D7 back to the 1 chord, A7, and then what we call a turnaround on the E7. And that brings us back to the beginning, right? So first step, we just want to play the chord on every downbeat, right? So in other words, I'm going to put on the drum loop and it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Just play the chord 1 time per measure. Let's do that together. I'll count this off. 1, 2, 3, 4, A7, 2, 3, 4, D7, 2, 3, 4, A7, 2, 3, 4, A7, 2, 3, 4, D7, 2, 3, 4, D7, 2, 3, 4, A7, 2, A7, 2, 3, 4, E7, 2, 3, 4, D7, 2, 3, 4, A7, 2, 3, 4, E7, 2, 3. Back to the top. 1 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord, 1 chord, 4 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord, 1 chord, 5 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord, 5 chord, big finish on the 1. Okay, great. So you want to know that like the back of your hand, and whenever you're playing a blues, like you want to know that so well you could be having a conversation with someone and just playing the right chords. You want to listen for that when you're listening to blues, or listen to any variation on that. So as you could hear, the drum track, it has a swing, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And so that swing feeling is a big part of the sound of the blues. So if I was going to swing all the eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, right? It's kind of like a long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long, short, long. And it comes from a triplet feel. Da 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 da. 1 2 3 1 2 3. So the blues has this kind of 3/2 feeling, or 3/4 kind of a feeling. So instead of just doing that, let's just go 1 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. So what we're doing is we're strumming on the 1 and the and of 2. That's just a basic blues comp. Comp means accompaniment, rhythm accompaniment. Right? Just a basic thing you want to master. And then you could kind of expand on it from there. Let's just do all down strum. So we'll go down, 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 just to keep it simple. A 1 2 3 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 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 and awesome. Okay, so now let's talk about a couple variations. So the second bar, you could see, goes to the 4 chord. Sometimes the first 4 bars are all the 1 chord. I like to call the second bar, when it goes to the 4 chord, a quick change on bar 2, right? Quick change, 1 to 4 right away, quick. And then another variation would be to not go to the 5 chord at the end. So it'll be 1 1 1 1, 4 4 1 1, 5 4 1 1. So we get 2 extra bars of the 1 chord, 1 less bar of the 5 chord, 1 less bar of the 4 chord. And then, of course, another variation would be having 1 4 1 1 in the first 4 bars, but no 5 chord as the last measure at the end. Then a lot of times in a slow blues, you'll hear 1 4 1 5 in the last 2 bars or something like that. So you'll hear little variations, but all in all, it's still based on the 12-bar form. So let's just do one that's a little more simple, the 1 1 1 1, 4 4 1 1, 5 4 1 1. Even though it's easier to play, it's harder to hear and feel, because we're going to have a lot of 1 chord in a row. The last 2 bars of the progression are going to be the 1 chord, and then the first 4 bars are the 1 chord. So you have to keep track of when the progression ends and when it starts again. So in that way, it's harder. That's why I didn't start with it. So let's go through it 2 times. This is the most basic, simple 12 bars. 1 2 1 2 3 4, A7. Stay there. Bar 3. Bar 4. Bar 5. 4 chord, right? 6. Bar 7. Back to the 1. Bar 8. Bar 9 going to the 5. 10 go to the 4, 11 and 12 on the 1. Now we're back to the top. Stay on the 1. To the 4. See, we were on that 1 for a while. Back to the 1. To the 5. 4, 1. Stay on the 1. Big ending on the 1. All right, excellent. So you're probably thinking, well, that was key of A. What about other keys? So first you want to get a few of your open keys. Key of A is popular, and so is key of E. So let's say E was our 1 chord. Okay, so now we're in E. Well, if E is 1, use your alphabet. E, F, G, A. A7 is 4. What comes after A? E, F, G, A, B. B7 is 5, right? So here's those chords written on the screen. E7, A7, and B7. Now the only new chord there is B7. A little difficult, but once you get the hang of it, there's no bar required. It's actually not that bad. Second finger on second fret of the string 5 or A string. There's our root note B. First finger on first fret of string 4, counting toes to nose. Third finger on second fret of string 3. Open string 2, and then pinky on second fret of string 1. Now if it's really hard, just leave off the high E string and just play this little D7 shape on strings 3, 4, 5. Just be careful not to strum the high E string. Okay, so now we already went over A7, E7. Let's say if we could play the whole chord progression in the key of E. A 1, 2, 3, 4, E7 to the A7. Back to the 1, E7. Stay on the 1. To the 4. Back to the 1. Here comes the 5, B7. To the 4, A7. To the 1. Turn around on the B7. Back to the top, E7, A7, back to the 1, E7. Here comes the second 4 bars, starts on the 4 chord, A7, back to the 1, E7. Going to the 5, B7, down to the 4, A7, to the 1, E7, turn around on the B7. Yeah. Now, a lot of guitar players neglect just basic rhythm guitar. I have a lot of students, they're fairly advanced playing a lot of blues licks and stuff, but when I say play a 12-bar blues, they lose track of the structure. That's totally backwards. Learn how to play the chord progression rock solid first, and then solo over it. And then when you're soloing, you'll have a better idea where you're heading. What chord am I heading to? You'll be hearing the chord progression as you're soloing. So what I recommend is looping. So here's a loop of what we just did. All right, everybody, I hope that gave you a basic understanding of how to play a 12-bar blues in the key of A, in the key of E. And then the great thing is, as long as you understand the structure, you could then apply that to other keys. So make sure you learn all the notes, at least on the E and the A string, and that'll start to get you away from open position. And on the website, we have a whole blues course where we move these progressions all over the neck. So be sure to head over to guitartricks.com. There's step-by-step courses on guitar fundamentals, blues, country, rock. There's in-depth song lessons with downloadable tabs, multiple videos per lesson, a guitar toolbox, and all sorts of other great stuff. Happy playing, and I'll see you in the next lesson.